So welcome back to our series on playing over changes, series 5 I think it is now. It's a big subject, lots of chord shapes and changes, lots of chord sequences rather I should say, to be investigated, and definitely have fun while you're doing it. That's the whole point really. But anyway, okay, so in the last episode we looked at playing from G minor to E flat. In this one I want to look at playing from E flat to D7. Now again, it's very important that when you're playing this stuff and you're using your chord shapes as your stepping stones, that you see those chord shapes in your mind's eye. So here's a little graphic of what I'd have in my mind's eye when I was playing from G minor to E flat. Okay, and the graphic for the G minor is the scale. The graphic for the E flat is the chord. Okay, so if you watched the last segment and you were playing G minor to E flat, that's really what you should have in your mind's eye when you're playing it. Okay, so it's logical then to say, well, if we've got E flat here, where could we go for our D7? Well, we could go here, or we could go here. Okay, now this is particularly interesting, this sequence, of reasons I'll come to in a moment. But okay, if we're playing over E flat, and as you can hear, it wants to go back to the G minor. So that would take us back over to the G minor again. So what have I done? Bending up to get the D, so if you will, and then back into my G minor again. This particular change, and again this is all about what the arrangement is as to what you might be able to get away with, but there are all sorts of extensions that you could put on these chords and therefore on the notes that you could play. And we're not going to go too far into that, but just to sow the seed really. So we could do this. We could do this. We could even do this. Okay, now as soon as we introduce a seventh into the E flat, we get some really interesting things. Now, not all that's going to be relevant in this particular situation. It may be great in others, but the point I'm making is there are always other things that you can do with a sequence. So don't say to yourself, well, okay, that's the end of E flat to D7. That's it, I've done it. I will never have to think of another thing about it because everything I've got there is perfect. Well, that's daft, really. There's always stuff there that you can do. Now, what you do have to do is to be tasteful about how you use it, because, just because you may know how to play 1,000 notes over some sequence, it doesn't mean to say that you've got to play them all. It just means that you should, well, theoretically, you should have a better choice of what notes you're actually going to use, rather than using more and more and more notes all the time. Okay, it's quite easy to articulate changes by actually very simple means. I'm going to give you a little example now, and it's a great example really. Okay, what have we got? Okay, so that's a great example from a classic song played by a classic guitarist. Okay, you don't have to be playing millions of notes all the time, but you do have to hit the right spots. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this particular series. So there's some interesting things to do there with minor keys, especially when you're stuck with a chord for a little bit longer than you might be comfortable with. Things we can add to those, and combinations we can play with articulating further changes later in the song. So all that stuff is there for the picking, if you'll excuse the pun. Thanks very much for watching. That's the end of this particular series. I'll be back with another one before very long, I suspect. So if you could hit the subscribe button, that would be great. And for the moment, bye for now.